Now, before we start this video, I just want to say that I'm not here to convince you, to like the album. I'm not going to force it down your throat and say, like this album, do it right now or something like that. I'm not here to, convince you. It's your own opinion, and if you don't like this album, I understand. There's no problem at all. Of course, our taste in music is subjective, and we all have different takes, shitty takes, like you could say for my video right here. I understand if people think that I'm just being delusional or just can't comprehend that Eminem can make bad albums, but I will be talking about something else later on about that. But I'm not gonna sit here and say that this album does not have any issues at all, and it's like the best album of all time, like the top three or whatever. I still think that this is a good album, just with a lot of flaws with it, and obviously, like I said before, what I'm talking about is Eminem's Revival, one of his most, like, not really controversial, but like the most mixed and just negatively reviews on it. Everyone just did not like it at all. And when I heard about the album, I didn't listen to it at first, but I heard that it was bad. I never really gave it a chance to listen to it at all. And only when I was like sort of adding more music to my playlist of Eminem, like I was going through some things like in Kamikaze. I remember listening to a song called Normal from the album where he mentioned about how um what was it like, it was sort of like a quick line saying that people are sleeping on something, and he said let's sleep on it like they did Revival, and sort of talking about how he believes it was still underrated, or just people are sleeping on it. And I always wondered what he meant by that. Obviously he was talking about the album, but I always felt like if he said that, then I feel like I kind of want to listen to it, just to give it a chance at least, because it feels kind of like fucked up to just give your opinion on something when you haven't even like listened or watched it at all, and only just blatantly follow the things that people have said about it, instead of giving it yourself a chance, because you never know if you actually like it. And I will say I have been listening to this album for a while now. I didn't just suddenly start listening to it recently. I have been listening to it for a while. I think maybe around a year or two now, if I recall. And I will say without a doubt, in my opinion, I will explain why, that I believe Revival is a good album. In my opinion, I actually really like it. I like a lot of the songs. Don't get me wrong, there are some songs that I'm not a huge fan of, and I feel like they're kind of weak, or at least from what people have said, like what at least are some good songs in that album. I will talk about it right now, but in my opinion, I personally believe that this album was pretty decent, and I actually kind of agree. I feel like, again, I'm not here to convince you that this album is good or anything like that. There's no point into that. It's your own opinion. But I personally believe that this album is actually really good, and in my opinion, my top five, one of his best albums of all time. So if I were to rank my albums right now, I of course would say Marshall Mathers LP 1, The Eminem Show, and you can go, like, you can fuck off. I don't care. This is my ranking. I will say Recovery is in the top three for sure. Um, of course, I guess Slim Shady LP is a good album as well. I will include that. And again, I would say Revival. I don't know, because like I like Slim Shady LP. I like it a lot, but I've listened to the other albums, and honestly, I prefer them more than if I would listen to Slim Shady LP. He has good songs in there, but I just prefer the other ones. So if I'm being honest, I know it's gonna sound terrible. I understand. I don't really care though. But you can share me all you want. I will say it will go with the Marshall Mathers LP 1, the Eminem Show, Recovery, Marshall Mathers LP 2, and Revival. And of course, I would say Slim Shady LP would be around fourth place if I could include two people or two albums in one placement, if that would work. But again, I'm not saying that the album is like worse compared to the other ones I just listed. I'm not saying that. I still respect that album for what it is and still appreciate it, and I like a lot of the songs he put in there. I just prefer some of the other albums that he's made in the future. Anyways, going back to that. So during the album of Revival, he made a total of 17 songs. I think if you exclude like the intros or whatever, I think a total of 17 songs. And I know people said that it's a lot of songs, but I mean, in my opinion, it's a good amount. But I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, I like a lot of songs if it means I can listen to a lot more Eminem. All right, so the songs for the album is "Walk on Water," "Believe," "Chloroseptic," "Untouchable," "River," "Remind Me," "Like Home," "Bad Husband," "Tragic Endings," "Framed," "Nowhere Fast," "Heat," "Offended," "Need Me," "In Your Head," "Castle," and "A Rose." Now, I'm going to talk about the songs that I'm just not a huge fan of right now. And starting off with "Walk on Water," I know some people might not agree at all, but in my opinion, when I'm listening to a song, I really like with what the artist brings with like the music and what I mean. I know what like I'm already expecting like what they're saying. That's the whole point of listening to what they say. But I was also just listening to the music and what it sounds like. And in here, it's just a piano playing, which there's nothing wrong with that at all, and Beyonce singing, in the what's it called, just "I Walk on Water," and there's nothing wrong with that. I think Beyonce did fine. I'm not hating on her or anything like that, but just I prefer listening to other songs that have a lot more going on, but it's still meaningful with what Eminem says in this song. I'm not gonna say that, or I'm not gonna, you know, disagree with that and still appreciate it for what it is. I think it's still a fine song. It's all right. But again, I would prefer listening to the other ones because there's a lot more going on and a lot more impactful with what Eminem says. But it's still a fine song. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying that it's a bad song. "Believe" is another one I'm not a huge fan of. Kind of similar to it, but again, I'm just not a huge fan of it. I still prefer all the other songs that it offers because I'm not a huge fan of the beat or just the music overall. Eminem is fine with what he's saying. I don't have a problem with what he's saying. It's just again, I prefer with the other songs because the music has a lot more going on with it, just the audio. Chloroseptic is actually one that I don't listen to often. So I'm not gonna give my opinion much on that one. But from what I've heard of it, or from the time that I've taken to listen to it, it's not too bad. But again, like I said, I prefer listening to the other ones. Now, "Untouchable" is one song that many people have shit on, and it's ever since Revival released, and I understand that. And in my opinion, I really think it goes with like what was going on with just the entirety of the song because I get the message with what Eminem was going for. I know what he was trying to say. But the biggest problem for me is just the first half of the song. Like I feel like the beat was really wacky, just really weird and so bizarre when it really came from just like listening to Eminem and this one because even if I would say old Eminem or whatever, or in sort of like his newer albums, not really newer, but more present, like Recovery and Marshall Mathers LP 2. Um, this one was so just bizarre when the first time I listened to it, and it really caught me off guard when I first listened to it. Especially in the beginning when it starts off like "Black Boy, Black Boy." I'm like, what the fuck? That was so just bizarre with what he did with this song. Like it's just crazy to me with how he made it like this. And the problem with it is the second half of this song was good. I actually believe that it's actually a fair beat. I think it sounds good with what he's saying, and much better with what the first half was because the first half was just so bizarre with the instruments like the guitar, or whatever. It, I really feel like it would have been better if he made the second half beat its entirety of the song. That probably would have been better. Maybe if he switched up like the lyrics a bit. I don't know. I'm not gonna say it's terrible or anything like that. I don't think it's a terrible song. Like nothing is good about it. But it definitely really could have been better with how he did it. And there's nothing wrong with like changing the beats of songs. One song that I want to say that did really good with it, it's not really similar, with me comparing it. But one song that I really do like is Kendrick Lamar's "Euphoria" with the way that he changed it. It sort of goes with the calm melody of shitting on Drake, and then suddenly making it more impacting with the second beat coming in and with what Kendrick is saying, and then changing it to a third beat and still going with this sort of like really good flow of Kendrick and just making it more hype to listen to. I always love that song. And Eminem could have done that, but I feel like he sort of executed a little, just not as good as it could have been. It really would have been better if maybe he did it differently with the first half, or the better option would have just been making the second half beat, or just the audio of it, just its entirety of the song. I feel like that could have been better, in my opinion. Anyways, moving on from that, other songs that I do want to talk about is Offended. I'm not really a huge fan of the chorus of Offended. I feel like it really could have been better. And it's not a song that, again, I listen to a lot. So the songs that I will say right now that I don't listen to a lot, that I'm not a huge fan of, I don't think that they're just inherently terrible. But songs that I don't really listen to a lot is Walk on Water, Believe, Chloroseptic. I listen to Untouchable. I still listen to that, so I'm not going to include that. I just think that there's some issues with that. Offended, and yeah, just those four songs. So Walk on Water, Believe, Chloroseptic, and Offended. I feel like Offended could have been a much better song. Um, but there were still, again, the sort of same issues with the other songs that I mentioned before. There's just more with what's going on with the other songs than what's going on with Offended, if that makes sense. Now, here are the songs that I think that I personally like. I actually do like listening to them mostly all the time, in my opinion. Whenever I'm listening to a Revival, these are the songs that I'm always listening to. I'm always listening, not really much Untouchable, but I still listen to it once in a while. I always listen to River, Remind Me, Like Home, Bad Husband, Tragic Endings, Framed, Nowhere Fast, Heat, Need Me, In Your Head, Castle, and A Rose. Those are the songs that I actually prefer listening to, and I think that are actually really good. Don't get me wrong, there are issues with that. Sorry, many issues with those songs. One example is "Remind Me." It sort of goes with the sample of "I Love Rock and Roll," which is a really good song, and I still think that Eminem did good with going with his sort of rap and combining it with rock and roll, the rock and roll sample, and combining it with a sort of rock and rap. I still think it's pretty good, in my opinion. I know people criticize this because of some lines, especially like the ones that I agree, like your booty is heavy duty, like diarrhea, like come on, Eminem, like what the fuck is that, man? Like what the fuck? I actually do think that that line was just it wasn't really like that great. It really did like clown. It made it like clown on Eminem a lot, and I feel like he could have done a lot better with what he said some things, and I understand he's going with like a sort of goofy sort of um I don't know flow of the song, but I still do think that this song is still decent. I actually do like the combination of you know Eminem and the song, the sample of rock and roll. I still think it's a good combination, even if people say that it was just executed poorly. I understand that. I just honestly prefer this, and I feel like it's nice. I don't really see the issue of people saying that like he focused too much on like pop or whatever. I don't really see a big issue with that if it means that I think he did really good with it. Like like again, so Remind Me is an example of that, or not really pop, but he used many samples like that. Another example is what was it? Sorry. Oh yeah, In Your Head, which was the song sampled "Zombie" by the Cranberries. Another good song that I think he did really good with that. And other songs, I guess he included like Ed Sheeran. Like I don't see an issue with that. I really don't. I think that Ed Sheeran did really good with his verse in River. I don't see a problem with that at all. And I don't give a fuck if you say, "Oh, it's because it doesn't sound like Eminem," or I don't know, like Eminem focused too much on mainstream or whatever. I don't see an issue with that at all. I really don't. And again, maybe it's because I just have different preferences with what I expect with Eminem. And sure, I can make that argument, or you could say that maybe you just don't know what Eminem's core playstyle is, and I don't really care. When I'm listening to Eminem, I want to listen to what he is saying, and I want to listen to what he comes up with songs. And even if people just don't like new Eminem, that's completely fine. I understand. There's no problem with that at all. But people need to also understand that people aren't just only focusing on wanting old Eminem, they also want new things from him. And I understand that he focused too much on adding new things to his albums. And I kind of respect that because at least he's trying to add new things, like experimenting with what he could do with his rap and just ideas from previous people, like, different genres, and seeing what he could come up with to make a good song. And of course, I understand he executed a lot of those examples poorly, if you would say. I understand that. But in my opinion, I don't have anything against with Eminem trying to expand his ideas and going with different sort of themes with his songs. But I understand the criticism. Like, I guess people say that with this song there was just too much going on with sort of like the pop sort of theme and then rock and then just the whole sort of just thing of that. I guess him trying to go mainstream, but I will talk about that a little later. Anyways, moving on from that, remind me. I don't care what you say. Besides that line, especially, and other lines in some songs, that line was pretty fucking just like what the fuck. He could have done better with that. Anyways, like home. I understand that people have said that this song was also too political, which I don't fucking understand. There are two songs from the 17 songs that are political. I don't understand how this is sort of like a revolutionary or like a big hoopla of, oh, it was just too political, he shouldn't be political. In a day like this, I feel like it is still kind of important to be political, especially when the political ideas really affects people's lives. And I feel like I respect Eminem with what he said in Like Home because he was expressing what he believes and what he believes is right, even if people disagree because of their own politics. I understand, and in my opinion, I respect that a lot because there are a lot of artists out there that just don't say anything at all out there or just express with what their mindset is and clearly shows that they aren't really in it to giving a shit about their fans at all and only in it with just giving a fuck about themselves, like, like some people. Anyways, I think Like Home is a decent song. Of course, I will understand, or I do understand this sort of was kind of like more dramatic and maybe sort of cliche what some people say, but I still think it's good. I actually still think and agree with what Eminem says in there because holy shit has this song aged like fine wine in my opinion. Anyways, we I'm not going to talk about or argue with people with politics in the comments. If you want to say something about this, don't even bother. I'm not going to argue with you. I personally like this song because I agree with Eminem in what he says, but of course if you disagree with Eminem on this song, that's fine. He even says it right here. If you don't agree, then that's fine, or whatever he says. Just again, I still personally believe that it's a good song. I'm sorry, I went on a huge rant on that part. Anyways, Bad Husband, I still think it's a good song, but Eminem really should have gone a lot more depth of taking more accountability of what he did back then. Because in this song, he obviously talks about being a terrible husband. And I believe, and again, I don't know Eminem's life. I don't obviously didn't live with him or whatever. I didn't exist during that time. I understand, and it's up to what Eminem and his family have said and what is true and what's not. With whatever has been going on or with whatever has been said of the relationship with his ex-wife and all that, it's always been he said or she said. That's all it's really ever been. I've tried searching up, seeing like what's the evidence or whatever. It's never really been evidence of that. It's just whatever he said or whatever she said. So for all we could know, like Kim could have been like this super evil, like just super dangerous person. Like that could have been such a huge piece of shit. And I'm not saying that she deserves or anything like that. I'm not gonna say anything like that. Or it also could have just been Eminem being most of the problem. And I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not going to say what is true or what is false because I don't know what happened during that time. But I feel like with all of the shit that Eminem said back then, especially towards Kim and especially towards his mom, Bad Husband could have been a lot more sort of more about taking a lot more accountability. And he does do that a little bit. Like he still does that a lot. But I shit you not, with the amount of things that he did back then, and even if you said like that was the whole point of like the Slim Shady alter ego or whatever, it still really, really negatively affected a lot of people in his family. And if you would disagree with that, or feel free to give your own opinion. But again, I really feel like this could have been a lot more. It's still good. It's still a good song, and I at least appreciate with him taking some accountability with that. But it could have been just a lot more better if he said what and how much he affected everyone else. And I really do feel like Kim just, I don't know. Again, I'm not gonna focus too much on that because I just don't know what happened, and obviously no one will know. But from what we know, I guess, is each of them were abusive in their own way. Abusive like physically and all that. And of course, both of them were really affected with drugs, and of course, that just made everything worse. And with Bad Husband, I feel like he should have gone a lot more with taking more accountability because, like, come on, he really did make a song of murdering his wife. I really do think that accounts for a lot more accountability than the amount he said. And I understand with him saying that, oh, fuck it, we both suck. Like, sure, Kim probably maybe did suck, I don't know. But it's also important to take a lot more accountability and say that I was a really big piece of shit. And sure, maybe you were as well a lot, not as bad as me, but I shouldn't have done that in the first place. I shouldn't have taken it that far. And at least he does include that when he was physically abused, he really did went to the studio and talked all that shit towards her. And at least that's fine. At least he did take some accountability, or a good amount of accountability, I guess. But I really do feel like he should have given a lot more. If you understand with what I'm saying, I really do feel like there was a lot more to talk about. But that's just me. And again, if I don't really, you know, mind, or it's all up to you with what he did back then, and just how much he treated everyone back then. I understand that he was sort of going with his whole Slim Shady alter ego, being very controversial and very just pretty bad, and like being a really bad person in general, and also just affecting his family as well. But there's just a point in time when like some things maybe just go too far, and I feel like even he agreed with that himself. He just took it too far with all of the shit that he said, especially with Kim. Anyways, moving on from that, holy shit. Other songs that I really do like is Heat. Now, Heat, the biggest issue with this one is just, in my opinion, the audio. Like, I think the audio is really weird because you can distinctly tell from the audio that some songs do not sound good, or just do not sound as normal as they should be. Like, if you would listen to the audio of how Eminem is singing in Like Home and then compare it to Heat, you can tell that there's a weird audio with going on. Like, it sounds like Home sounds like a normal Eminem song. With Heat, it sounds like a demo, or not really a demo, but like it sounds like I can hear the audio while he's literally in the studio, like just raw audio of him singing the song. That's what it sounds like to me. But other than that, I think that Heat is a decent song. Again, there are some issues with it, like some of the lines that he says is pretty corny and cliche. Don't get me wrong, that's understandable. That's an understandable critique of that, I guess. But the biggest thing with this song or this album is just him going in depth with showing his vulnerability and just saying all the things that he should have said, or just emotional songs, because you all know that Eminem has always been really good with making emotional songs, especially when it involves including his drug addiction from back then and recovering from it, and also how it affected everyone else, and also how bad his childhood was, how bad his relationship with his wife was, how bad it was with the problems with him and his mom, and just how much it also affected people like his daughter. And it is good that he made a lot of songs with this one, and I personally really like this song or this album a lot because he goes a lot more in depth with all of those emotions, that he usually says. Typically, like when in every album, he includes like maybe one, two, or three emotional songs, and the other ones are just normal Eminem songs, I guess you could say, or whatever. I don't really know how to describe it. But in this one, he really went in depth with going as emotional as he can and showing his vulnerability of everything that he's just done and everything that he went through, and trying to, I guess, make amends of everything. The good example, or a good example of this, is if you listen to A Rose, you can literally just hear audio of, I'm pretty sure, Eminem being in his deathbed and talking about how much he wish he could just turn back time and how much he regrets everything, especially with taking those drugs, and how much it affected everyone and how much he will miss out with, being able to just take care of his daughters and all that. And I like these songs, and personally for me, I always like the emotional songs that Eminem makes because it really feels like Eminem is being more honest whenever he's making those songs. Examples like, if you would listen to Encore. Encore, in my opinion, I don't know about you guys, I know people always say that Revival is like his worst album out of any of the other ones, but I just don't see it because Encore, in my opinion, was way, or just in my opinion, the weakest one because it was still during a time when Eminem was, uh, it's still like bad to me. I'm not really a huge fan of it, but there is some excuse of that because of how rushed it was, especially because apparently some of the songs were leaked or the album was leaked. So some songs had to be rushed out and weren't polished enough, which I understand that, but I still believe it should have just been better if he just released the songs overall, but maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about, and I don't know. I'm not really sure, but I really do feel like it could have been better if he just released the songs like it's just how it was, but I don't know. But in my opinion, I really do feel like Encore was his worst album compared to other ones. But there are still some good things about it, like Mockingbird. You always know, or you can always see that many songs of his, especially when they're emotional or impactful, they always have the biggest hits. Mockingbird was a good example of that because of just him being extremely honest and putting the character away. Like, if you actually just listen to some of his songs, like Big Weenie, and then listen to Mockingbird, you can feel like he's being a lot more honest and just being more regretful of everything that's going on. And even though he still was not really doing good with taking a lot of accountability as a husband, he at least, I guess, was sort of at least being more honest with sort of maybe talking about Haley or talking to Haley, I guess. So with emotional songs like that, I'm always a huge fan of that. But I understand with some examples of people saying like there was just too much going on, because if M primarily focused on Revival being just an emotional album, just that, and not really including songs like what is it, like Heat and um Remind Me, or just wacky songs like that. If he primarily focused on it just being an entire emotional roller coaster, that album would have been, or the album probably would have been much more better received, in my opinion. But if it wasn't, that definitely would have hurt him even more than ever because all of the vulnerability that he showed in just being emotional, like an emotional album, definitely would have hurt him even more than before. But it's really hard with people, I understand, to like the album because they appreciate the emotional songs, and then suddenly Eminem just adds these really bizarre and like sort of like weird songs that he includes, like Remind Me and Heat, talking about like, girls having fat asses or whatever, or murdering people or something like that. Which there's nothing, like, I guess, wrong with that, but I feel like if you're making an album that was supposed to be like talking about your beliefs and taking accountability or just feeling regretful of what he did back then it should have just been primarily that focus instead of like combining a lot of these things together, if you get what I mean. So overall, with this album, I really do feel like there are a lot of issues, and I've tried to listing them. Holy shit, I can't say it. I've tried saying them, and of course, I understand that I probably missed out on a lot more, and maybe I was being too generous. But I will say that this album does have a lot of flaws. But I will not say, in my opinion, I will not say that this album was his worst album of all time. I still think Encore was definitely more poorly made, but at least he had sort of an excuse of that because of his album being leaked or whatever, and he had to rush out different songs in replacement of that, which I understand. But at least it wasn't a huge waste because he still had very good songs like Mockingbird, like Toy Soldiers, and Just Lose It. I think Just Lose It is definitely the good song. It really feels like if you're listening to the real Slim Shady or Without Me, for Encore, it feels like you're listening to one of those versions. Just Lose It is a really funny and wacky song that I personally just like listening to. So I wouldn't say that it's like just a waste and there's nothing good about it. I still think it's like okay, but it definitely has a lot of issues with that. I think it's definitely his weakest album, but I can understand why it happened, like why it's his weakest. At least there's a reason to that. And people will say, but there isn't a reason for Revival to being bad because this album took 2 years to make. And yeah, you're right. There should have been some things that he could have fixed or he should have fixed to keep in mind of what he was saying, especially many of those corny lines that he said. That I understand that people just didn't really like too much. And again, I know I keep saying this. I understand. But to me, I really do feel like Revival is a worthy album to include from his whole discography. I really do feel like it is. And that's why, to me, without a doubt, and no matter what you say, even if you say that I may be a delusional Eminem fan or whatever, or, like, again, I just have no idea what I'm talking about, or I'm just interested in slop or whatever, I really do feel like Revival is one of my favorite albums from him, definitely in the top five. So again, I would say it would be I'm sorry, I almost got it confused. Marshall Mathers LP1, The Eminem Show, Recovery. What was it? Yeah, Recovery. I think I said Revival. No, I think I put no. Yeah, no. It was Marshall Mathers LP1, The Eminem Show, Recovery, Marshall Mathers LP2, Revival, and after that, his other albums. But again, like I said, Slim Shady LP, nothing wrong with that. I would put it in fourth place if I could combine, if there could be two placements or two albums in one placement, if that would work. Now, to get to the point of why, like, why do I really think that Revival is good? Because I really do think that it has to do with the time that I started listening to Eminem, and like I said, I started listening to him during Recovery, and of course, I shouldn't have been because I was still a kid listening to Eminem. I didn't listen to his previous albums from then, but I did start with Recovery, and to me, I think because of that and how I listened to Eminem, and how he expanded on ideas of making different songs and not just primarily being like rap or whatever, like in his previous albums, and how much he tried to like add more things to it. I feel like I was now more open to what he says or to what he makes after that. And because of that, I don't have a problem with his old albums. I really don't. I do like old albums. I like his old albums a lot and listen to a lot of them still to this day. Example is like I listen a lot to Superman. I listen to Soldier. Not like Two Soldiers. It's still a good song, but I listen to Soldier from the Eminem Show. Very good song. And other ones like The Way I Am, definitely my favorite song of all time from him. And of course other classics like Without Me and The Real Some Shady. But to me, I really do appreciate with how far M has gotten with just becoming a better person. And I know some people just don't like that, or not in like that way, but they preferred it when he was more controversial and more sort of open to like not giving a fuck. But of course, it was all in alter ego, but also a massive double-edged sword to him because of all the things that he did go through. Obviously, his childhood was like terrible. The treatment with his mom was terrible as well. the whole relationship with his ex-wife was insane and unhinged, and just in addition of being addicted to drugs made everything worse. But sure, it did make him talented, not the drugs or whatever, but like, he was still really talented in what he said, and very impacting with what he said. But it was a massive double-edged sword to him because of how much it negatively affected everyone in his family. Everyone that he, I guess, had problems with, how it affected his mom, how it affected his ex-wife and everything, how everyone was treating Kim like a massive like piece of shit, like some tool or whatever. A lot of things that he did was fucked up. And he realizes that a lot and wants to focus on becoming a better person. Well, sure, maybe like being a little immature once in a while, but not to the same degree of being a massive like outrage and just like controversial person, and just wants to be a better example of people. You know, that's why when I listen to Recovery, I always love listening to a lot of his songs from there. Like, obviously, Not Afraid is a very good one. Love the Way You Lie. No Love. Other songs like Cold Wind Blows is a good one. 25 to Life. It's Never Over. Um, So Bad is a good one as well. Many songs like that. Some being sort of like wacky and him sort of like being more cocky, and also just being more impactful and motivational for others instead of just being this negative person. Sure, some people liked it and him being more honest like that, but it's something that he just doesn't really like anymore. And even when he does try, it never really works to me. An example is the death of Slim Shady. Like, he tried to focus a lot on, sort of bringing back his old theme of being Slim Shady, but it never really worked because obviously he's not trying to be like that controversial person like he was back then. And whenever he tried to, it felt like he was just trying too hard, and it felt a lot more corny than impactful, if that makes sense. And that's why even with Eminem, he hates it when people say, "Oh, I miss the old Eminem," because they never know what the fuck they want. When he tries to do that, it never works, I guess. Like, an example is the Marshall Mathers LP2, where he tries to be sort of more like that. Um, but people say, oh, he was focusing too much on like being too nostalgic or whatever, which again, I just don't understand how that works. I personally just like the album because I like the songs. That's all it really is. I'm not so fixated on, oh, it really feels like Slim Shady's back, where like it really feels like old Eminem. When I listen to them, I listen to it because I like listening to Eminem. That's all it is. So when I listen to Berserk, when I listen to Legacy, I think, man, this is a good Eminem song. I really do think it's really good. I'm not fixated on, man, this feels like old Eminem, man. Holy shit. I really wish he focused a lot on that. Like, I know, I get it. He became famous for all of the shit that he did back then and how impactful he was and how impactful he still is, but he's trying to be impactful and not in the way where in such a negative way, if that makes sense. So to me, that's why I feel like it's really different with liking Eminem, because of course he has evolved a lot throughout the year or throughout the years. Of course, people will prefer Eminem when it was his first three albums more than his newer albums, which I understand. But because I was born, or not born, but because I was listening to him at the time when he was being motivational and being just more respecting and just wanting to becoming a better person and showing his regret of everything else that he's done, it feels like I'm definitely more open to with what he says and what he makes in music than if I were to just only listen to his first three albums. Because of course, I'm not gonna lie, he was very good at what he said in the first three albums. He was very talented. He was very impactful. It was insane how good he was, and he still is good to me, in my opinion. I think he's still really good. But I'm just saying, like, I don't see a problem to me. I don't really see a problem with me to me of him trying to expand more ideas on his music and not just only focus on being rap or whatever. Just showing more ideas to his fans and what maybe they can prefer, what they like, maybe what he thinks of his ideas that he's coming up with. And sure, maybe sometimes they're poorly made or poorly executed, but I think it's still worth a shot with what he did. And with Revival, I still think it was very worthy of him trying to show what he believes, showing his regret, and yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. But I feel like he did it in a difficult way, where it kind of made it so the emotional things were kind of bizarre when you include the very weird and wacky songs like "Remind Me" and what's it called, "Heat." So I agree. This album definitely could have had a lot of fixes, and it could have been better. I feel like it definitely would have been executed more better if he just fixed these problems more. If he focused on some things more than just focusing on one thing and then including two other things. And honestly, the political part I don't even really mind at all. Maybe Untouchable has its problems, but like Home, like it wasn't really even that like terrible. I really don't think. Sure, it was kind of like corny and maybe a little bit dramatic, but I still think it was worthy of him to include it, and I still think it's a good album. Good song because of what he says. Again, I know there are some corny lines that he says in there, but that doesn't mean that the entirety is terrible. I really don't think so. I still think that it's still a really good album, really good songs. Sure, there are some issues with it, but I just wanted to express my opinion. And I know, holy shit, this has been going on for so long, but I really wanted to say a lot because I really do think that Revival is a decent album. I really do think it is, and I understand that if you don't like it, I understand. We all have different opinions. Even if you started listening to Eminem during my time, like recovery, and even though you still didn't like it, that's fine. I understand. It's just, in my opinion, that's the way I view it. I started listening to Eminem more during his time when he was being more mature and trying to improve as a better person. And that's why I feel like I'm more open to what he makes. And even if it's not like just entirely rap, I don't entirely expect him to just be that. I expect him to just be himself, make good music, and see what decisions he made and see if they were a good decision. So, in my opinion, I still think that Revival is a good decision, a good album. Many flaws. I've tried listing as many as I could, and feel free to let me know what else you think. But other than that, all I really want to say is no matter what you say, I will always believe that Revival is a good album. I will still cherish it in my heart no matter what. Even if you try to convince me that it was just genuinely a terrible album, I just genuinely don't think it's not. I just don't think it is. I don't think it's a terrible album where nothing is redeemable about it. I think that this album has a lot of good things about it, some problems with it, but it was still something that I respect Eminem working on. And as I listed some things that he could have fixed, I don't think it was just a waste. I feel like it was just something that I will forever listen to, no matter what, even if you don't think so, or even if you think I'm delusional. Feel free to let me know what you think. If you think I'm just making shit up, of course, there are some things that I just got wrong in here that I should have fixed or I should have known. But I'm just going off of this with this video. I'm just going off of me liking an album, me liking songs. That's all it really is. It's not me going like trying to make some excuses or like trying to convince people to say, "Oh, this album's really good" or whatever. I'm just saying it because I just like it. That's all it really is. I just love this album no matter what. It will always be in my top 5, and that's all I really have to say. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you respect my opinion. I understand if you don't, if you think I'm full of shit. But, I really have nothing else to say. I hope you appreciate my opinion. I hope you understand. Feel free to let me know what you think. What do you think? Do you think I'm delusional? Do you agree? I kind of doubt it, but do you agree that this is a good album? Or maybe at least has some redeeming qualities to it? If not, let me know. What do you think? What should I have improved? What should I have included? Sorry, I'm talking a lot. I've been talking for a while now. It's been like an hour or more that I've been constantly talking because I've been trying to fix some things in here. So my mouth is getting dry, and I'm fucking up on my wording. But yeah, other than that, I hope you enjoyed. Again, let me know what you think. If you agree, if you disagree, I don't know. But no matter what, at the end of the day, Revival, to me, as an opinion, is a good album. That's all I have to say. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. I don't know when. I'm sorry with the slow videos and the disappointing videos, but I'm trying my best. It's just been really hectic with everything that's been going on in my life. So, other than that, I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. See ya.
Yeah, I got a few wishes. Yeah, we got a few wishes. Got why these niggas tricking. Got why these niggas tricking. Teachers say I'm different. Teachers said we different. But I chose the streets and pimpin'. But we chose the streets and pimpin'.